He sat at the small café by the window, nervously stirring his coffee even though it had gone cold long ago. The snow outside drifted slowly, painting the city white. Ethan glanced at his watch for what felt like the 100th time. He had agreed to this blind date only because his sister had begged him to give it a chance. "You've been alone too long," she'd said. But now, as he sat waiting, he wondered if this was just another wasted evening. The bell over the café door jingled softly. Ethan looked up. A woman stepped in, brushing snow from her coat. She hesitated for a moment, scanning the room. There was something oddly familiar about her, but he couldn't place it. She had a quiet grace, her scarf wrapped loosely around her neck, her dark hair damp from the snow, and her eyes searching. Then, when their eyes met, the world seemed to pause. Her name was Claire. At least, that's what his sister had said the girl's name would be. But as she approached, Ethan's heart started pounding. He knew her. He just didn't know how yet. She smiled, nervously tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Ethan," she asked softly. "Claire," he replied, standing up. For a moment, they just looked at each other, two strangers who somehow didn't feel like strangers at all. As they sat down, the air between them filled with warmth that had nothing to do with the cafe heater. They started talking, awkwardly at first, but then something shifted. Every word, every laugh, every shared glance felt oddly natural. She told him she was a schoolteacher who had recently moved to Toronto after losing her mother. He shared how he worked in architecture but hadn't been inspired in years. Somewhere between their sips of coffee, they both began to realize this wasn't just another blind date. When she smiled, Ethan's mind flickered to a memory, years ago, at the children's hospital where he used to volunteer. A young woman had been there every weekend, reading stories to sick kids. He remembered her eyes, kind, patient, filled with life. Could it be her? He had never forgotten those eyes. "I used to volunteer at St. Mary's," he said suddenly. Claire froze, her hand halfway to her cup. "You did," she whispered. "Yes," he said, his voice softening. "There was this woman there. She always brought books for the children. The kids loved her. I never got her name, but I remember her eyes." Her lips parted slightly, and for a long second, she just stared at him. Then, tears glistened in her eyes. "That was me," she said. Ethan felt his breath catch. The world outside the cafe faded, leaving only the two of them and the quiet hum of their shared memories. "I remember how you made the children laugh," he said, his voice low. "Especially the little girl with leukemia. You gave her so much hope." Claire's eyes filled with emotion. "She passed away 2 months later," she whispered. "After that, I couldn't go back. It hurt too much." He reached across the table and gently took her hand. "You gave her something beautiful," he said. "You gave her joy. That's something I've never forgotten." For a while, neither of them spoke. The snow outside thickened, blanketing the city in stillness. And in that quiet, they both felt something deeper, something that went beyond coincidence. Fate had brought them together once, and somehow, it had done so again. Hours passed without them noticing. They talked about life, regrets, dreams they thought they'd lost. And when the cafe lights dimmed, Ethan didn't want the night to end. As they stepped outside, the cold wind brushed against their cheeks. Claire looked up at the snow falling under the streetlights and smiled softly. "It's strange," she said. "I almost didn't come tonight. I thought maybe this wasn't for me." Ethan looked at her, his eyes warm. "I almost didn't either," he admitted. "But I'm glad we did." For a moment, they just stood there, two souls who had once crossed paths in silence, now finding each other again in the quiet hum of falling snow. And when their eyes met once more, it wasn't confusion he felt this time, it was recognition. Recognition of kindness, of shared pain, of something rare and real. Weeks turned into months, and their connection deepened. They would meet at the same cafe every Saturday, talking for hours, learning how two broken people could heal each other's hearts. Claire taught Ethan to find beauty in small moments again, while Ethan helped Claire rediscover the courage she thought she'd lost. One evening, as they walked by the frozen lake, Ethan turned to her and said, "You know, I think the universe knew what it was doing when it made me wait that night." Claire smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "Sometimes," she said softly, We meet people twice, once when we're not ready, and once when we are. He smiled, pulling her closer as the snow began to fall again, gently wrapping the world in silence. Their story wasn't about chance anymore, it was about timing, forgiveness, and the quiet magic that happens when two hearts finally recognize each other. And somewhere in the city, inside that small cafe by the window, two empty coffee cups sat side by side, reminders of the night two strangers realized they had already met once before. Because sometimes love doesn't need grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes, all it takes is a second glance, and the courage to remember.